Hi everyone, and welcome to Blackwood Engage Layout and the March update. So what's been going on over the last few weeks? Well, I've started work on the helix. I've actually ordered the first of the two helixes. There's a lead time of around 6 to 8 weeks for the guy that's building the helix for it to actually appear. So I thought in the meantime I can actually start work on building the actual baseboards. So I've been down to good old B&Q and purchased some 9mm ply and various battens. I'm using 2 3/4 inch by 1 inch battens, which is what I used on the main layout itself, and I never ever had any problems with that. I've ordered and I've received my pattern maker's dowels, because the baseboards I will want them to be able to be separated out if I ever have to move the layout within this room. So they have arrived, and what I will do in this video is I'll show you how you actually use these pattern maker's dowels. As I say, I'll take you underneath the layout in a bit and show you just exactly what I'm up to. The other thing I do have to do is I have to say a big thank you to Rachel at Mini Westaston Junction. Now, out the blue, I received a parcel from her, and upon opening that, it is full of Engage industrial buildings that are actually from Mini Westaston Junction. And those of you who follow Rachel's layout will know that she has repurposed the industrial estate area, and some, if not all, of these buildings that were there before have now come up here to Blackwood Engage Layout. And yes, they will find a home here. I do have an idea as to where I want to use them. They will probably be used on the second helix, because the second helix will sit just behind me over my shoulder, and I'm planning to use the top of the helix to try and extend the sidings that are on the far side of the layout. So if I can extend the sidings, I can probably fit these industrial units in to make it look like an industrial estate, which will be really, really brilliant. So thank you very much, Rachel, for sending these buildings up. Very much appreciated. So there will be a running session as usual. That will be obviously towards the end of the actual video. So if you don't want to listen to me blethering away, then you can feel free to jump to the end of the video and watch the running session. So what we'll do now is we'll go underneath the baseboards, and we'll show you what progress has been made on helix number 1. Right, so we've come down to the side of the layout, and what I have in front of me at the moment is the square baseboard that will eventually take the weight of the helix. So in terms of the size, this is 29.5 inches by 29.5 inches square. There is, as you can see in the floor there, I've got 4th radius double curves set out. So obviously the 3rd radius will be obviously inside that, and as you can see I've got a 3rd radius and a 4th radius double curve sitting roughly where tracks will come off the base of the helix. So obviously you have to use a bit of imagination at the moment. Nothing is screwed in. At the moment all I've got is the wood cut to the relevant sizes. So if I come up slightly, you will see the side of the base. What will happen will be the 2 running lines or passing loops that the camera's currently looking at. These will essentially become main lines. Unfortunately, this bridge here will probably have to come out and have to get rebuilt. Obviously the scenery on the right hand side here against the back scene, that will come away, and at the moment you can see just under there, you'll see there's actually a point just underneath which gives access to a siding. Now when I build the helix at first, I will actually use that as an access point, basically to test that the helix works. I'll do that before I remove any scenery, because if the helix is not going to work, I'm not wanting to rip out these tracks here. But provided the helix does work, then these tracks will come out, and if I come round, this corner here will also disappear. This will get repurposed. As you can see, there are two sidings here that go underneath the bridge. Now these sidings, again, these are going to become mainline tracks, and they're quite tight just at this end here. So what I'll do is, by removing the industrial estate here, or the brewery, this will allow a more sweeping curve to come round here, and then obviously, as you can see, as you come around here, you're now just back at the bridge. If I turn round, you can see the bridge just there. So the access to the helix on this side will come from this area here. So it will come off, and as I say, the helix is not hard up against the layout. It sits, if you can probably, if I come back, you can see where it is on the floor in relation to the layout. It's not hard up against it. So that will allow the curves or the track to curve round at the top onto the helix, and then it will come down, and it's going to come down and the baseboards are going to be roughly 15 inches below the level of the current layout. So if I come back here, as you'll see, we've got the main baseboard, which will hold the helix, and then there'll be a linking baseboard. That's what's sitting on the floor here. And the linking baseboard is dictated by the width between the legs, because obviously I can't remove the legs, so the actual layout would fall down. So you can see just on the other side where my glasses are actually sitting just now, you'll see the next baseboard. Now that's not actually the proper baseboard top. The proper baseboard top needs to be cut down very, very slightly to allow it to fit between the legs, but that is 4 foot long, and from what my calculations is, I can actually get around about 8 tracks onto that width of baseboard, because it's N-gauge. So although it's a narrow baseboard, it will still carry quite a number of tracks. So that will be, if you like, if I come back here, this will be baseboard number 1, which will carry the actual helix. Baseboard number 2 will be this linking baseboard. This is where the point work will probably start to separate out the tracks. And then baseboard number 3 will be the 4 foot one, which will be right underneath the main back baseboard of the layout. And then on the other side, although I've not done anything yet, there'll be another small baseboard, and then there'll be a very, very narrow baseboard to carry just 2 tracks all the way along to the far side to where the next helix will be, and the tracks should then come back up. And if I now come back out of here, now you do have to use your imagination, because obviously if we zoom in a little bit, if we go the right way, so roughly at that end there should be another helix. There's enough room between there and the side of the building to put another helix in, and then 2 tracks will come up and they will join on to the end of these sidings here. So there's one siding there, and the other siding is there, and that will give you that will give me a fantastic huge running loop coming out along here. Now I have an idea at the moment to actually slope the track going down a very gentle hill, so that means the helix on this side here won't be quite as tall, or won't require to be quite as tall as the other helix, because I'll actually slope the tracks coming down. I've got an idea in my head of maybe deep retaining walls, maybe it's something like the mucky hole at Crewe, I don't know, but something along those lines, so that the 2 tracks will very gently go down, meet the helix. And if I've been able to reduce the helix in height, that's where, as you can see, the chimney stack up there is the refinery. I would then be able to extend the sidings there onto the top of the helix, and that's where I'll be able to use the industrial buildings that Rachel has sent up from Minnie with Aston Junction, so that might be their new home. So that's the plan for the Helix, and that's where I've got to at the moment. So what I'll now do is I'll show you how I use the pattern maker's dowels to ensure that the baseboards all line up. It's the same pattern maker's dowels that I have used in the existing baseboards up here, and they've never ever given me any problems, so hence the reason I wanted to use them on the lower baseboard. So let's go and have a look and I'll show you what we do. You get them from Station Road Baseboards, and they cost £4.50 for a pair. So you have a male and you have a female. These are machined to a tolerance of 0.05 millimeters. So when they fit in, there is no essential wriggle room. So obviously when these are fitted properly to the baseboards will align up correctly every single time. So how do we fit them? Okay, put that to one side. Forward we bring, so here we go. Here are two end pieces of two separate baseboards. So this is actually going to be the width of the baseboard that will sit underneath the main back baseboard, and this is the corresponding bit for the next baseboard. So what I've done here is, first of all, you need to find the centres. So I've centred the line drawn right away across there, centred down the middle, and then you'll see the two marks there. That's the actual centre. That's where we want to put the actual dowels. So we'll have one there, and we will have one there. On the opposite side, we'll obviously have the female connectors. Okay, that's the principle of it. So how do we go about it? So first of all, now that we've got the centres found, the first thing we want to do is we want to clamp these two pieces of wood together. So we're wanting to clamp them, and we're wanting to make sure that these tops here are absolutely flush. Once we've clamped them, what we will do is we'll take a 3mm drill bit and we'll drill through these two holes, or these two marks here. We'll go all the way through the first piece of wood. We don't need to go through this bit of wood so long as there's a couple of marks on it, so we know where to actually make the countersunk holes for the pattern maker's dowel. That's fine. So once you've drilled through, you can then obviously separate the two pieces of wood again, and what you're then going to use is this here, which is a 25mm spade bit, and you'll open the holes out. So it'll be 1, 2, 3, 4. Now these here at 25mm are slightly bigger than the actual pattern maker's dowels. You only need to go down to a depth of 3mm, so it's not a huge, it's just a very, very shallow hole. And the one thing that I will say, that if you're fitting these, you have to make sure that you're holding your drill bit or your drill absolutely perpendicular. You can't have it over to one side or to the other side, because it means that everything will be off centre. Now I'm lucky, I do have a drill stand, and the drill stand obviously keeps the actual drill itself at 90 degrees. So that's a one tip I would have to give you. You have to be very careful when you drill the holes. Once you've drilled the holes, you can put in, this is the male part of the pattern maker's dowel, so they can be simply put in. You don't screw them in. What you actually do is you get some epoxy resin and you drop them in with some epoxy resin. Do not put any screws in at this point. For the females, you'll do much the same. The only thing that you do have to do is, as you can see, there is obviously the male obviously goes into the female like that, and you can see the knuckle protrudes a little bit, so you need to have a slightly deeper hole in the centre. So if you use a 9mm drill bit, you can open out the centre of this hole here to allow the knuckle to fit in. Same principle, you'll put that in with some epoxy resin, and then what you do is, with these just simply in with epoxy resin, you'll bring these two sides back together again. But before you do that, very important, Vaseline petroleum jelly. You need to smear Vaseline petroleum jelly, because if you don't, the chances are that if any of the epoxy resin oozes out of the screw holes, you will in actual fact permanently stick your two baseboard sides together. So very important, put some Vaseline onto it. Once you've done that, you simply bring the two sides together, clamp them, make sure everything is lined up again. That's why, as I say, these holes are a fraction bigger than the actual pattern maker's dowel itself, so that allows the pattern maker's dowel to find its correct position in the alignment. Let that dry. Once it's dry, you can unclamp the two pieces of wood, and you can obviously then put in the locating screws just to make sure they don't move. And once you've done that, that is you. You've got your baseboard alignment. You can then obviously build your actual baseboards. You can put on the other pieces of wood to make up your square baseboard, rectangular baseboard, whatever it is. The only other thing you will need to do is, while that will locate the baseboards, you will need to drill a couple of holes right through both sides to put in a bolt. These are the bolts I use. These are just coach bolts. They're pan-headed and they just simply drop all the way through. There's a butterfly screw on the other side, and that's how the baseboards are physically joined together. So the dowels will make sure the baseboard is aligned. So if you have track up above and you cut the track will align every single time you move the baseboard. You take the baseboards apart, then bring them back together again. And then, just to keep everything nice and tight, two of these either side, and that's you. So what I'll do is I'll go ahead. I should actually say, if you get these from Station Road Baseboards, they do supply you with the small screws. You get the bag of screws as well. So I will go ahead and I will make up this these two bits, and I'll come back to you in a bit. Okay, so I've finished that bit, and if I take this off here, then you can see the pattern maker's dowels are there, and as you can see, they clip back together again like that, and you can see there is absolutely no movement. If I zoom out a little bit, it was the wrong way. You should be able to see they're absolutely flush. So when the baseboard gets screwed to either side of this, the baseboards will line up, and that is basically how you use pattern maker's dowels. So I hope that was it was very, very quick. I appreciate that, but it is quite simple if you follow these steps, and you will end up with perfectly aligned baseboards if you need to take your layout apart and then bring it back together again. And that's what they look like once they're actually finished.